Amid countless worlds that seem like pure fiction, lie battles, sacrifices, and secrets that have never been told. Every story is a war between destiny and choice. If you're ready to uncover heroes, villains, and the forgotten souls lost in between, then step into the world of Comic Recap, where every tale is a battle for survival.
The origins of the Dark Brotherhood are cloaked in secrecy, much like the hidden places from which its assassins emerge. To understand this infamous guild, one must first explore the mysterious figure known as the Night Mother. Her identity is one of Tamriel's most debated religious enigmas. Some scholars suggest she is an aspect of Mephala, the Daedric prince of secrets, murder, and forbidden pleasures. This theory is supported by the parallels between Mephala's domains and the Brotherhood's methods manipulation, conspiracy, and the destruction of sacred bonds. Historical sources, especially those found in old Brotherhood hideouts, reinforce this connection. For instance, in Sacred Witness, Mephala is described as having taught the Morag Tong the arts of murder and seduction, shaping the early rituals that would influence the Dark Brotherhood. Both groups value secrecy, view death as a form of art, and share hierarchical traditions that echo Mephala's influence. Despite this, the Brotherhood rejects any association with Mephala. Instead, their teachings honor the Night Mother as the consort of Sithis, the embodiment of the void. Texts such as the Brothers of Darkness describe her as a Dunmer woman who bore 5 children to Sithis and later sacrificed them in his name, becoming his chosen voice in the mortal world. The Brotherhood believes she still communicates with Sithis in the void, delivering his commands to the listener. Records from the late Merethic era tell of a Dunmer woman executed for killing her 5 children in a ritual devoted to Sithisan event. Many dismiss as coincidence, though it aligns closely with the Brotherhood's earliest known actions. In Brotherhood sanctuaries, particularly those in Cyrodiil, the Night Mother is often depicted as a decayed corpse surrounded by the remains of children, mirroring this grim tale. The split between the Morag Tong and the Dark Brotherhood actually occurred in the late First Era, not the Second, as many imperial accounts claim. It was driven by internal religious disagreements within the Morag Tong. Documents from House Enderil indicate that around the year 1, E2200, a faction began advocating for direct worship of Sithis rather than Mephala. This group, led by a figure whose name has been erased from all records, believed Mephala was merely a messenger, and that true devotion belonged to the void itself. The Morag Tong rejected these beliefs as heretical. Their order had long operated with Mephala's approval, performing sanctioned killings under the writ system, which allowed them legal standing within Dunmer society, especially under House Enderil's protection. The dissenters, however, viewed this as a betrayal of their spiritual purpose. They believed assassination should be a sacred ritual, not a political tool. Tensions reached a breaking point after the assassination of Potentate Versidue Shai in 1 E2920. Although the Morag Tong took credit to maintain their legal status in Morrowind, internal evidence suggests it was actually carried out by the breakaway group. This marked the first true act of the Dark Brotherhood in unsanctioned killing meant to honor Sithis directly. In response, the Morag Tong's Grandmaster Estes initiated a violent purge. The conflict, known as the Night of Pale Blades, led to heavy casualties on both sides in the underground streets of Mournhold. The surviving dissidents fled west into Cyrodiil and Black Marsh, where they founded the first official Dark Brotherhood enclaves. Is this conversation helpful so far? The creation of the 5 tenets marked the transformation of the group from a scattered collection of cultists into a structured organization. These rules, said to have been received by the first listener directly from the Night Mother, brought order to what had previously been a disorganized group of killers. Historical documents found in a ruined sanctuary near Chiden Hall identify the first listener as a former Morag Tong assassin named Kor. He claimed the Night Mother spoke to him during meditation at her shrine in the year 1E 2351. Kor established the 5 tenets, which became the foundation of the group's code of conduct. The first tenet emphasized never dishonoring the Night Mother, reflecting the spiritual core of the organization. The second forbade betraying the group or revealing its secrets, preserving its secrecy. The third demanded complete obedience, requiring members to follow any order from a superior without question. The fourth prohibited stealing from fellow members. The fifth, and most sacred, forbade killing another member of the group. These tenets not only maintain discipline within an organization of assassins, but also defined their spiritual devotion and distinguished them from other factions like the Morag Tong, which operated under legal and political structures rather than religious ones. Violations of the tenets were said to invoke the wrath of a spectral being called the Wrath of Sithis, believed to hunt down those who broke the rules. While many dismissed this as myth, several captured assassins reported experiences with such an entity. One journal from a sanctuary in Wayrest includes a confession from an assassin who stole from his comrades and was later haunted by a shadowy figure that drained his warmth until he admitted his crime. After the Morag Tong was officially recognized in Morrowind following the assassination of Versidue Shai, the group saw a chance to expand. While the Morag Tong operated publicly within Morrowind, the secretive nature of the Brotherhood allowed it to spread across Tamriel's criminal underworld. Their expansion followed specific trends in different regions. In Cyrodiil, they infiltrated established criminal groups, especially in the Imperial City, where they founded their first major sanctuary outside Morrowind around 2E 2937. Records from this time show a rise in unsolved noble murders, with victims marked by the notorious Black Hand symbol in High Rock. The Brotherhood thrived amid the region's tangled political scene. Ongoing conflicts between noble families ensured a constant demand for assassinations. By 2E12, sanctuaries were active in West Daggerfall and Evermore, often disguised as funeral services. Hammerfell posed more difficulty. The Redguard culture viewed assassination as dishonorable. Even so, the Brotherhood established bases in key port cities like Sentinel and Hegathy by 2E37. There, they focused on foreign targets such as merchants and diplomats, whose deaths were less likely to provoke cultural backlash. During the late First Era, expansion into regions like Valenwood and beyond was achieved through various strategies. In Valenwood, agents disguised themselves as followers of local deities, altering certain rituals to include aspects of their own beliefs. In other regions, they integrated into existing thieves' guilds, presenting themselves as an extension of those networks where the ultimate crime was the taking of life. In Black Marsh, the ideology found an unexpectedly receptive audience, with many locals identifying similarities between the Brotherhood's beliefs and their native religious figures. By the year 2E200, several hidden bases had been established in this area, particularly near border towns like Gideon and Stormhold. Skyrim resisted the group's influence until the middle of the Second Era. The local culture, which valued direct confrontation, initially viewed assassination as dishonorable. However, during the War of Succession, internal strife led some factions to employ the Brotherhood's services. A base founded in Windhelm's Snow Quarter around 2E230 became infamous for eliminating several key figures. The spread of the Brotherhood significantly reshaped the political dynamics across the continent. Unlike another prominent assassination group that operated under legal sanction, the Brotherhood acknowledged no law except that of their faith. This made them more adaptable and willing to accept jobs others would decline due to legal or moral constraints. As they expanded, they also developed a distinctive organizational system. Each base operated semi-independently, led by a speaker who received instructions from a higher authority through a council known as the Black Hand. This structure enabled the group to survive numerous attempts to destroy them. Archaeological findings from former bases show how they adapted to local customs while preserving their central beliefs. In Cyrodiil, they followed structured record-keeping practices. In Hammerfell, they integrated local death rituals into their work. In Valenwood, they utilized native plant-based poisons. This ability to blend into diverse cultures, combined with intense religious dedication, made the Brotherhood more resilient than most other criminal organizations. By the end of the Second Era, they had become the leading assassination guild across the continent, surpassing even older, established groups in both influence and reach. While one rival guild continued its traditional, legally recognized role in a limited region, the Brotherhood operated continent-wide, available to anyone who knew how to contact them and could pay. What began as a small cult evolved into a widespread network of professional killers, marked by a distinctive black handprint symbol. Their growth from obscure sect to dominant force resulted from strategic planning, ideological commitment, and adaptability. Their core belief that killing in the name of their deity transcends politics provided a unifying purpose, even as their operations evolved across different lands and times. At the center of their faith stands a divine figure representing the Void, to whom all acts of assassination are ultimately dedicated. Unlike the Idra or Dra, who appear with clear identities and domains, Sias represents something much more ancient non-existence itself. Sias is not to be mistaken for Padme. Although they are connected in a metaphysical sense, Padme embodies the forces of change and chaos in creation, while Sias is considered the soul of Padmeath, essence of limitation, entropy, and undoing. Ancient texts recovered from the Cheydinhole Sanctuary describe Sai as the beginning of all true foundations that resist stagnation. This aligns with old Argonian beliefs, which see Sai as the potential for transformation through destruction. Over time, the Brotherhood's understanding of Sai shifted significantly from the earlier Morag Tong perspective. While the Morag Tong saw Sias as an abstract force linked to Mephala, the Brotherhood began to venerate Sai directly as the Dread Father. This theological transformation occurred gradually during the late First Era, around the time the first permanent Brotherhood sanctuaries were built outside Morrowind. Archaeological discoveries from the abandoned Warius Sanctuary include a fragmented text called The Sublime Void, which offers rare insight into early Brotherhood beliefs. According to this text, Sai is not a being, but the howling emptiness where all genuine creation takes place. Sai consumes mortal souls not out of desire, but out of necessity, for only through death, and can existence be freed from stagnation. The bond between Sai and the Night Mother is central to the Brotherhood's belief system. According to their most accepted doctrine, the Night Mother is Sai's bride and acts as the link between him and his mortal followers. Since Sai embodies non-existence, he cannot interact directly with the world without a medium. The Night Mother fulfills this role through what is called the Binding Sacrament. Records from a ruined sanctuary near Skingrad describe a ritual carried out by the original Night Mother, in which she sacrificed her 5 children to Sai and then took her own life, while speaking incantations in an unknown tongue. Brotherhood scholars believe this act established a permanent channel between the void and the mortal world, allowing Sai to influence reality through her spirit. This connection is demonstrated by the Night Mother's ability to hear the Black Sacrament when performed properly. This ritual, which involves human remains, nightshade, and a skeletal effigy, enables her to receive a request and pass it on to the listener. This communication doesn't happen through ordinary speech, but through a phenomenon called the whisper, a voice that echoes directly in the listener's mind. The concept of the Dread Father sets Brotherhood belief apart from traditional worship of Daedric princes. While those princes have defined personalities, desires, and domains, and interact with mortals through manifestations or artifacts, Sai is not viewed as a being with a will. Instead, he is revered as a fundamental force. Texts, such as the darkness thereof, describe him as the space between the stars, the emptiness where potential lies. Whereas Daedric worship involves rituals and offerings, devotion to Sai is primarily expressed through the act of killing. Do you like this personality? Each assassination is viewed as a form of devotion, and every death is seen as a sacrifice that sustains the void. This belief explains why assassins of the Brotherhood seldom pray for success before undertaking missions. According to journals recovered from executed members, praying beforehand is considered unnecessary. The act of killing itself is the prayer. One such journal, seized by Imperial forces in 3345, includes the passage, "We do not request success as a beggar asks for aid. We offer success through the blade's strike." The prayer and its answer are the same. The Brotherhood's view of the void as the final destination after death is another unique aspect of their faith. While many religions across the land promise some form of afterlife, such as the halls of Sovngarde for noble Nords or the far shores for honorable Redguards, the Brotherhood believes their souls return to the void after death. This state is not described as a reward or punishment, but as a complete absence of sensation. It is a form of existence that many outside the Brotherhood find incomprehensible and unappealing. Yet, for the devoted assassin, this dissolution into nothingness is the ultimate form of unity with the void. Fragments from a rare Brotherhood theological manuscript describe this afterlife as the fulfillment of their purpose, to serve in life and return to the void in death. This is considered the highest expression of their belief. The void, in their teachings, is more than just an afterlife. It is a guiding principle for their view of reality. Texts recovered from the Fowry Sanctuary suggest the Brotherhood sees existence as fleeting and illusory. All creation is destined to return to the void, and assassination merely accelerates this natural return. This outlook shapes how they perceive their targets. Unlike ordinary killers driven by emotion or greed, Brotherhood assassins believe their victims already belong to the void and are simply waiting to be sent back. This belief allows them to kill without anger or guilt, seeing themselves as instruments of cosmic order rather than agents of violence. Following the events of the Oblivion Crisis, the Brotherhood's theology evolved. Writings from the early Fourth Era indicate a shift from viewing the void as a force of destruction to seeing it as a source of transformation. A prayer text titled "The Litany of the Void," discovered in a Bruma sanctuary, describes the void as the darkness between stars that makes the emergence of new light possible. This reinterpretation casts the Brotherhood's killings not as endings, but as necessary transitions. Interestingly, the Argonian perspective on the void, particularly among those connected to the Hist, differs from Brotherhood teachings despite some similarities. For them, the void is a force of continual change rather than total erasure. Is this conversation helpful so far? The legions had taken heavy losses during the war, with some units reduced to less than a quarter of their original strength. The capital was in ruins, its population devastated by the occupation. Most significantly, the Empire's economy had collapsed after 4 years of all-out war, with farming severely damaged and trade routes disrupted. The Emperor considered these issues, alongside intelligence about the enemy's remaining military strength. Though one major enemy army had been destroyed, large forces still remained in Valenwood and the Somerset Isles. The enemy navy continued to dominate much of the Ebesian Sea, threatening to blockade imperial ports. Even more alarming were reports that the enemy could raise new armies within a year, while the Empire would need much longer to rebuild. After hours of intense debate, the Emperor reached a conclusion. The Empire would accept the white gold concordat not because of weakness, but as a strategic choice. What looked like a shameful surrender was, in truth, the only option that could allow the Empire to survive and regain its strength in the future. The signing was brief and somber. No speeches were made, only a heavy sense of grim determination. The enemy emissary received the signed agreement with a slight nod that conveyed both approval and arrogance. Messengers quickly left for the Somerset Isles to deliver news of the diplomatic success. The Concordat's terms were enforced immediately, beginning with the official disbanding of the Blades. Those who could be contacted were discreetly told to disappear, though many were eventually tracked down and killed. The fortress of Cloud Ruler Temple, which had served as the Emperor's wartime command center, was abandoned. Its records were either moved to secure locations or destroyed to prevent enemy access. A new organization, the Penitus Oculatus, was formed under Commander Morrow, a loyal veteran of the Imperial Legion. Unlike the Blades, who had selected members from all races based on skill and loyalty. The new group recruited solely from the Legion's officer ranks, ensuring close alignment with the military. The ban on Talos worship caused immediate controversy, especially in Skyrim. There, the people deeply revered Talos, not only as a god but as a great hero from their own heritage. Imperial officials in the province faced the difficult task of enforcing a ban many of them personally disagreed with. The High King of Skyrim reluctantly agreed to uphold the ban, but allowed a grace period for shrines and symbols to be removed voluntarily. In Cyrodiil, the response was quieter. Worn out by war and occupation, the people generally accepted the restrictions as the cost of peace. Urban temples adjusted their imagery to exclude Talos, though in rural regions enforcement was less strict. Some communities continued worship in secret, holding ceremonies in private homes or remote areas away from official scrutiny. The territorial concessions involving Hammerfell triggered the most immediate and intense reaction. Distinguishing historical fact from religious legend becomes increasingly challenging when analyzing the infamous sacrifice attributed to the Night Mother. According to Brotherhood teachings, after giving birth to 5 children, she offered them in sacrifice to the Dread Father. A rare Brotherhood text titled The Liturgy of the Devouring, discovered in the Ware Sanctuary, provides unsettling details of this act. On the night of the waning moons, she gathered her 5 children around the hearth. The eldest was smothered with a nightshade stuffed pillow, the second drowned in sacred waters, the third poisoned through her milk, and the 4th and 5th ones were strangled using a cord made from her own hair. With each death, she is said to have whispered, "Sweet Sithis, I send you your children, born of my body, but belonging to your darkness." Imperial scholars have dismissed the account as the product of cult exaggeration. However, archaeological findings at what is believed to be her original home revealed the remains of 5 children, bearing trauma consistent with the described killings. Carbon dating places the remains around 1E1301, aligning with the earliest Brotherhood references to the Night Mother's sacrifice. Following this event, Brotherhood texts claim she was the first to hear Sithis speak directly to her, marking the beginning of the listener tradition. These accounts vary in describing this contact. Some say it was an audible whisper, like a blade over flesh, while others describe it as a spiritual communion beyond physical perception. Historical records show that her actions initially led to widespread condemnation. Contemporary Dunmer documents refer to a Mother of Night executed for child murder in a dark ritual. According to records from House Endoril, she was burned alive by a mob. However, when her remains were sought the next day, her body had vanished. Brotherhood sources tell a different story. One manuscript, The Night Mother's Truth, claims 5 followers, former Morag Tong assassins, who converted to Sithis worship, retrieved her charred body before sunrise and hid it. These 5 became the first Black Hand, with one assuming the role of listener and the others becoming speakers. The preservation of her body remains one of the Brotherhood's most macabre traditions. Unlike typical relics that consist of fragments or objects, the Brotherhood claims to possess the entire mummified body of their founder. Unhallowed Remains, a technical manual found in the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, outlines the process. The body is treated with void salts, nightshade essence, and human blood. The internal cavity is cleaned and filled with preserved organs wrapped in linen soaked in innocent tears. The skin, is regularly anointed with oil derived from human fat and vampire dust to prevent decomposition. In this way, she is kept between life and death, as befits the bride of Sithis. Forensic residue discovered in deserted Brotherhood sanctuaries supports the use of these described preservation methods, implying the account may be more literal than symbolic. The Brotherhood's preservation techniques were highly effective. The Night Mother's body reportedly retained identifiable features for centuries, although the extent to which magic was used alongside alchemical methods is uncertain. Her preserved remains became both a central object of reverence and the means through which the Brotherhood received instructions. These messages were delivered through the listener, a person chosen by the Night Mother to hear her voice. The method by which the listener was selected remains a closely guarded secret, though some details have surfaced through captured members and recovered texts. According to these sources, when a listener died, the Night Mother would cease communication until a suitable replacement was found. This process could take anywhere from a few days to several years, during which the Brotherhood relied only on previously issued contracts. Once a new listener was chosen, the Night Mother would speak to them directly, often providing information they could not have otherwise known, serving as confirmation of their selection. The position of listener came with great responsibility and risk. Unlike speakers, who remained anonymous even within the group, the listener's identity was known to the entire leadership, making them vulnerable to internal rivalries and external threats. Of the 23 known listeners in history, 17 met violent ends, 7 were assassinated, 6 killed in conflict with authorities, and 4 executed after capture. One of the most prominent listeners was Alysanne Duper, who led during the later part of the Third Era. Her leadership marked a period of major expansion in a region known as Zero Deal. Historical records note that she introduced new recruitment methods focused on psychological screening, which reduced the number of unstable members likely to break the organization's core rules. Under her leadership, the Brotherhood developed more precise assassination strategies, lowering collateral damage and reducing detection by Imperial forces. Duper's service ended during the Oblivion Crisis, when enemy forces destroyed the Cheydinhal Sanctuary. Documents indicate she died protecting the Night Mother's remains from cultists intent on their destruction. Before her death, she issued orders that helped the Brotherhood survive the crisis and eventually recover. Another notable listener was the figure known as the Hero of Quatch, who assumed the role after the Oblivion Crisis. While official records emphasize this individual's efforts in closing Oblivion gates and aiding Martin Septim, internal Brotherhood accounts present a different narrative. These state that the hero initially infiltrated the group to investigate a series of murders, but ultimately rose through its ranks to become listener. After removing a traitor from within, the hero led a major reorganization of the Brotherhood, closing compromised locations and establishing new ones across Zero Deal. This period also saw the introduction of stricter security, including coded greetings such as the now famous, "What is the color of night?" The communication between the Night Mother and the listener also enabled the Brotherhood's most distinctive recruitment method, the Black Sacrament. This ritual allowed individuals with no prior ties to the organization to make contact. The required Elemensa human body part, a skeleton, nightshade, and a dagger served both practical and symbolic functions. Practically, they created a magical signature detectable over long distances. Symbolically, they represented the key aspects of an assassination, with the body part representing the intended victim The skeleton symbolized the ultimate fate of the individual. The nightshade was tied to the void, and the dagger represented the method. The complexity of the ritual ensured that only those truly dedicated would carry it out, effectively discouraging impulsive actions. When executed properly, the Black Sacrament created a disturbance in the void that the Night Mother could detect. She would then pass on the request location and details to the listener, who would assign a speaker to contact the client. This method ensured total anonymity while remaining accessible to those determined to seek their aid. The effectiveness of this system is evident in official records documenting failed attempts to suppress their activities. Even with widespread surveillance of known criminal circles and informants placed in various organizations, authorities consistently failed to intercept contracts made through the Black Sacrament. A report from intelligence officials in the year 3E433 expressed frustration that the Brotherhood's contract process remained immune to standard investigative methods. Throughout history, the physical remains of the Night Mother have been moved across Tamriel, often coinciding with major shifts in the Brotherhood's power or in response to emerging threats. The earliest known resting place was a shrine beneath Bravel in Cyrodiil, where the body stayed from around 1E2200 to 2E230. Archaeological findings indicate that the shrine was originally a temple of another faith, later altered by the Brotherhood to enhance its acoustics, likely to hear the Night Mother's whispers more clearly. Following an organized assault by Imperial forces near 2E230, the Black Hand moved the remains to Morrowind. Documents from a deserted sanctuary near Mournhold show that the body was kept in underground chambers beneath an abandoned house. This location held symbolic value by returning the Night Mother to her homeland, and the region's political unrest offered a protective cover for Brotherhood operations. The remains stayed in Morrowind until the early Third Era, when increased scrutiny from the Tribunal Temple forced another relocation. The body was then moved to Skyrim, to a sanctuary beneath the city of Falkreath. The cold climate aided in preservation, and the area's relative isolation offered additional protection from Imperial oversight. Perhaps the most notable move came after the Oblivion Crisis, when the crypt in Bravel was compromised. Records indicate that the listener at the time organized a complex operation to transfer the remains to a sanctuary hidden beneath the statue known as the Lucky Old Lady in Chidenhall. This event aligned with a significant internal purge, indicating the relocation served both strategic and political purposes. Transporting the Night Mother's remains posed major logistical challenges, overcome through a mix of magical means, deception, and precise planning. A manual found in an abandoned sanctuary near Skingrad outlines the protocols. The body was to be placed in an ebony coffin lined with nightshade and void salts. 5 members would accompany the remains at all times, each representing one of her sacrificed children. The route would be finalized no more than a day in advance and altered regularly to avoid detection. In populated areas, the coffin would be disguised as merchant goods or noble baggage with expertly forged documents. For longer trips, temporary shrines would be set up in secure locations along the way. Do you like this personality? At designated sites, individuals would engage in rituals with the Night Mother to maintain a strong connection to the void, even though her physical body had been relocated. Her remains served not only as a means for communication with the listener, but also played a key role in internal Brotherhood ceremonies. Ancient writings describe various rites conducted in her presence, such as the binding of the hand ritual, which officially appointed new speakers. During this event, the new speaker would place their hand on the Night Mother's mummified body while swearing oaths of loyalty. Another important ceremony was the Whisper of Ascension, which occurred when a new listener was chosen. During this ritual, the full Black Hand would assemble, and the chosen individual would kneel before the Night Mother's remains throughout the night. If she accepted them, she was said to whisper the names of all ongoing contracts to the listener, offering information that could not be known by ordinary means, thus validating their selection. Archaeological findings suggest these rituals incorporated traditions from various Tamrielic cultures, reflecting the Brotherhood's widespread membership. Artifacts found at Night Mother shrines include ceremonial daggers from the Altmer, incense burners from the Red Guards, and sacrificial bowls from the Nords. These items imply that while the central beliefs remained consistent, their practice was influenced by local customs. The Night Mother's power extended beyond death, surpassing even her role as the Brotherhood's spiritual guide. Records from different regions mention assassins receiving direct guidance from her during especially perilous missions. Although official doctrine states only the listener can hear her voice, these stories suggest a deeper link between the Night Mother and the Brotherhood's members during times of great need. A journal found on an assassin who died in Herock in 392 recounts such an event. Trapped by patrolling guards with no way out, the assassin experienced an overwhelming sense of clarity. Without hearing words, they instinctively knew which shadows to hide in and which path would lead to safety. They credited the Night Mother for this guidance, while Imperial scholars often dismiss these accounts as stress-induced hallucinations mixed with deep devotion. The consistency of such stories across time and location suggests something beyond ordinary explanation. Whether these are true supernatural encounters or powerful psychological effects remains an enduring mystery. The Dark Brotherhood follows a rigid and long-standing hierarchy. At its highest level is the listener, the only one able to hear the Night Mother's voice. This unique link to the void is the foundation of the Brotherhood's leadership, ensuring the Night Mother's will is passed down from the spiritual realm to the physical world. Reporting to the listener is the Black Hand, the governing body that oversees all Brotherhood operations throughout Tamriel. This council consists of the listener and 4 speakers, each symbolizing a finger in the Brotherhood's emblem. Historical records from the Shai-Dinhal Sanctuary indicate that this structure was formalized around the year 1 E 2400, about 2 centuries after the Brotherhood's origin. Before this, leadership was managed by a loosely organized group of elder assassins with varying claims to spiritual authority. Each speaker is responsible for a particular region, managing multiple sanctuaries and overseeing assassination contracts within their area. To maintain secrecy, speakers seldom reveal their identities, even to other members outside the Black Hand. They communicate with sanctuary leaders through agents known as silencers. This compartmentalized structure serves to protect the organization. This is a compelling and richly detailed narrative of a transformative period in Black Marsh's history. Here's a breakdown of what stands out, and a few suggestions for refinement, depending on your goals for this piece. Strengths. 1. Plausible political shift. The rise of the Enzo faction feels organic, their ideology becoming mainstream due to prophecy-like accuracy echoes real-world historical shifts where fringe movements gain prominence following crisis. 2. Strong character contrast. The sidelining of Keshu the Black Finn in favor of more militant voices shows internal conflict among Argonians and reflects the tension between cooperation and vengeance. 3. Tactical realism. The use of humanitarian aid as a Trojan horse is a sophisticated and believable tactic. The Siege of Tyr combines traditional and unconventional warfare methods that suit the Argonians' physiology and cultural knowledge. 4. Tone and themes. You maintain a consistent tone of post-cataclysmic transformation, revenge, and calculated ambition. Themes of power vacuums, identity reclamation, and moral ambiguity are well handled. Suggestions for enhancement. 1. Name and identity of the Enzel. Consider briefly clarifying the origin of the Enzel name or ideology. Was it a term for vengeance, liberation, or perhaps tied to a historical figure? This would deepen their identity. 2. Argonian culture and motivations. A line or two exploring how Enzel leaders reconciled traditional Argonian values, often depicted as community-focused and spiritual, with expansionist militarism, would enrich the transformation arc. 3. Dunmer perspective. You could add a short passage from a Dunmer, civilian, or leader's viewpoint even, just a reaction to show the psychological impact of this reversal in power, which would contrast nicely with the Argonian triumph. 4. Broader geopolitical reactions. Did the Nords, or Imperial remnants, react to these events? Even a mention of regional uncertainty or fear would help contextualize the significance of Argonian aggression beyond Morrowind. 5. Timeline cue. A subtle date or reference to the exact year post-Red Year, e.g. 6E6, if using Tez Fanon, would help orient readers in time. Optional additions. Propaganda or symbolism. Introduce an image or slogan used by the Enzel something, evocative like "the chains break both ways," to enhance their revolutionary branding. Magical adaptation. Did the Enzel develop or repurpose magic, perhaps Hist-based, for warfare or infiltration? This would be fitting and immersive. Let me know if you'd like help turning this into a short story, lore-friendly history scroll, or even a game campaign setting. This is strong, and with a little polish or expansion, it could rival official lore. You're giving feedback on a new version of ChatGPT. Which response do you prefer? Responses may take a moment to load. ChatGPT. Response 1. The most common magical requirement for entry involves answering a question with a specific phrase, usually a version of "What is the color of night?" The correct response is typically "Sanguine, my brother," or a local variation. These doors do more than check for the right phrase. Their enchantments are capable of detecting a person's intent. Analysis of a damaged black door from a ruined sanctuary revealed it could sense whether someone was being forced to enter or doing so willingly. If coercion was detected, the door would activate defensive spells, such as paralysis toxins or fire-based attacks. Behind these guarded entrances Sanctuaries generally follow a similar layout, adapted to their location. Central chambers often contain a shrine and, in more significant sanctuaries, a space reserved for the Night Mother's remains when they are present. Around this ritual area are living quarters, training zones, poison labs, and libraries, with records of contracts and organizational history. One well-documented example is the Cheydinhall Sanctuary, abandoned in the early Fourth Era. Built in natural caves under the city, it featured a central chamber with stained glass art showing a skeletal figure embracing the Night Mother. Nearby passages led to specialized spaces, including a poison garden for rare ingredients, training rooms with lighting setups for different mission scenarios, and living areas sized based on the member's rank. In contrast, the sanctuary in Falkreath, Skyrim, was constructed within an ancient Nordic tomb. After its destruction, reports indicated that burial chambers were repurposed for practical use while retaining the original design for concealment. This location included a large natural pool for water supply and evidence disposal, along with cold storage rooms that used the local climate to preserve alchemical materials. One of the most unusual sanctuaries was a floating base in the Abyssian Sea during the late Third Era. Built inside a decommissioned Imperial ship anchored in neutral waters, it allowed operations across several coastal cities without interference from any government. It was later abandoned after storm damage rendered the vessel unusable, but it showed the organization's flexibility in creating hidden bases. Security for these sanctuaries goes well beyond hidden doors and enchantments. Multiple protective layers are used, starting with surveillance systems and surrounding areas. In cities, the group uses informants like beggars, shopkeepers, and even guards to report on potential threats. In remote areas, trained assassins observe animal behavior for signs of danger. Internal defenses include physical traps, such as poison darts, blade traps, and hidden spike pits, as well as magical wards. Recovered text describe magical protections like shadow wards, which confuse intruders by making hallways seem to loop endlessly. The most secure sections are usually the contract archives and poison storerooms. The archives contain sensitive details about missions and clients, while the poison stores hold rare, illicit, or magically altered toxins. These areas often have special locks that only open with the blood of approved members. Despite these extensive measures, sanctuaries have still been breached. Historical accounts note at least 17 major incursions between the First and Fourth Eras, caused by internal betrayal or organized attacks by Imperial forces. I prefer this response. ChatGPT Response 2. A common form of magical protection used on certain doors involves a question and answer system requiring a specific phrase to gain access. The question is often some version of, "What is the color of night?" with the correct answer being, "Sanguine, my brother," or a local variation. However, these doors do more than just require a password. Studies of a damaged black door found at a destroyed sanctuary revealed enchantments that could sense a visitor's intent. The door could tell whether someone was willingly entering or being forced, and in the latter case, it would activate defenses such as paralysis poisons or fire spells. Inside, these sanctuaries tend to follow a common structural pattern tailored to their surroundings. Central chambers usually feature a shrine to a figure called the Listener, and larger locations may include a space for the Night Mother when her remains are present. Around this central area are residential quarters, training zones, alchemy labs for creating poisons, and archives holding contracts in organizational history. One well-documented example, the Chidinhal Sanctuary, was located in natural caves under a city. Its main room had a stained glass depiction of the Listener and the Night Mother. Other sections included a poison garden, training rooms with adjustable lighting for various mission scenarios, and member quarters sized according to rank. Another example, the Falkreath Sanctuary, was constructed within an old Nordic tomb. After its fall, records showed that the group adapted the tomb's chambers into practical spaces while preserving its original design for concealment. This location also featured a large natural pool for water supply and evidence disposal, along with cold storage that took advantage of the region's climate to preserve ingredients. A more unusual base once existed at sea aboard a retired Imperial ship anchored in international waters. This floating sanctuary allowed operations across multiple coastal cities without falling under any government's control. It was eventually abandoned after storm damage rendered the vessel unusable, but it reflected the group's flexibility in setting up operational centers. Sanctuary security goes far beyond hidden doors and enchantments. These locations are protected by layers of defense. Urban sanctuaries use networks of informants, including beggars, merchants, and even guards, to detect threats early. Rural sanctuaries rely on wildlife behavior as a warning system, with members trained to notice unusual activity. Inside, defenses include physical traps like poison darts, swinging blades, and hidden spike pits. These are reinforced with magical protections, such as illusion wards, that confuse intruders by making them see endless loops. The most secure parts of any sanctuary are the archives and poison storage. Archives hold sensitive records of missions and clients, while the poison stores contain rare and dangerous substances. Both areas are often locked with systems that only respond to the blood of trusted members. Despite these precautions, sanctuaries have been breached multiple times throughout history. At least 17 major incidents between the First and Fourth eras due to betrayal or military action. I prefer this response. After each security breach, the Brotherhood adjusted its protocols, learning from past incidents. The most notable change occurred after the Chidinhal Sanctuary was destroyed during the Oblivion Crisis. Realizing the risk of having fixed locations during large-scale unrest, they introduced what is internally called the Scattered Shadow Protocol. This system allows for rapid evacuation and relocation of sanctuary operations, including pre-selected backup locations, emergency supply stashes, and communication methods that work even if standard systems fail. Daily life inside a Brotherhood sanctuary combines the practical needs of an assassination organization with the spiritual practices of a cult. Contrary to public perception, these sanctuaries are not centers of constant violence or excess. Instead, they follow structured routines, focused on training, preparing for assignments, and engaging in religious practices. A typical day begins with physical training, essential for maintaining the high fitness levels required for missions. This training prioritizes stealth, endurance, and quick strikes over prolonged combat. Afterward, members work on developing specialized skills like making poisons, picking locks, crafting disguises, and using magic for assassinations. In the afternoons, the focus shifts to planning and carrying out contracts. Assassins analyze target details, develop strategies, and prepare the necessary tools. Those not on active assignments contribute by maintaining the sanctuary, managing supplies, or training newcomers. Senior members often teach advanced techniques to preserve institutional knowledge. Evenings often involve communal meals, strengthening the familial ties encouraged among members. These gatherings also serve as opportunities to discuss operations and reinforce internal hierarchy. Religious practices usually follow, including readings from Brotherhood texts and meditation focused on worship. The training for new recruits is extremely rigorous. Unlike other martial organizations, which mainly focus on combat, the Brotherhood offers a broad curriculum to prepare adaptable assassins. A recovered schedule from the Bruma Sanctuary shows a 3-month initiation period covering 16 skill areas, from basic weapon use to advanced poison making and body disposal. This phase ends with the first offering, a supervised assassination meant to test the recruit's practical abilities. Targets are chosen to challenge each recruit's weaknesses. For example, someone skilled in archery but poor at close combat might be required to complete a kill using a dagger. Psychological conditioning is also a major part of training. Recruits undergo exercises aimed at making killing feel normal and suppressing traditional moral responses. A manual titled The Severing of Conscience, found in an abandoned sanctuary near Anvil, details methods such as gradual exposure to death, framing murder as a religious duty, and meditations on internal emptiness. The Brotherhood's magical instruction differs greatly from traditional institutions like the Mages Guild. Unlike traditional magical education, which begins with broad theoretical study before moving into specific areas, training within the Brotherhood emphasizes immediate, hands-on learning focused on assassination. Key skills include using illusion magic for stealth, alteration for tasks like lockpicking and escape, and destruction spells designed to leave minimal trace. A unique magical field practiced by the Brotherhood is known as void channeling, which is said to tap directly into a mysterious source of power. Imperial academics often regard this as a form of psychological conditioning cloaked in spiritual language. Yet, some recovered Brotherhood items hint at real mystical abilities. One such artifact, the Blade of War Tree from a fallen assassin in 3433, displayed enchantments not seen in mainstream magical study, including the capacity to drain life force without using standard soul-trapping methods. Each Brotherhood sanctuary operates with a balance between centralized oversight and local independence. The Black Hand sets general policies and handles high-level contracts, while daily activities are managed by the local sanctuary leadership. This structure enables flexibility in different regions while maintaining internal unity. Disciplinary matters within the sanctuaries are governed by 5 central rules. Lesser violations lead to penalties like extra duties or short-term imprisonment, but serious breaches, particularly those breaking the first or second rule, are usually met with execution, typically carried out by a silencer as a display of the Black Hand's authority. The Black Sacrament is one of the most feared rituals in the region, serving as a direct method for individuals to request the Brotherhood's deadly services. Unlike typical transactions handled through intermediaries, this rite forges a supernatural link to the Night Mother herself, initiating a process that can culminate in an authorized killing. The ritual calls for specific items, both symbolic and functional, human flesh or remains, a full skeleton, nightshade flowers, and a dagger. These elements must be arranged in a particular circular layout, with the supplicant reciting the invocation, sweet mother, send your child unto me, for the sins of the unworthy must be baptized in blood and fear. The use of human remains anchors the ritual's necromantic component. Ideally, the flesh comes from someone recently deceased to maintain a strong spiritual connection, improving the rite's potency. In practice, people have used everything from exhumed corpses to freshly killed bodies with varying success. The skeleton symbolizes the target's fate and serves as a magical link, with Brotherhood texts advising that the bones should match the intended victim in physical traits like height, build, and gender. This detail explains why investigations have found multiple skeletons at some ritual sites, as clients may try to fine-tune the ritual's effect. The nightshade flowers serve as the botanical element essential for complex necromantic rites. In contrast to their usual toxic applications, the flowers are used whole in the sacrament. The required type Tamrielic nightshade features deep purple-black petals and contains alkaloids that, when burned, may heighten the summoner's sensitivity to the Night Mother's presence. Brotherhood texts outline the proper preparation for the ritual. The petals must be separated from the stems and arranged in a perfect circle around the effigy, with additional petals placed where the heart would be. The dagger is both a tool and a symbol, representing the method of killing while physically initiating the ritual through repeated stabbing. Brotherhood documents note that the blade should ideally be made of steel or silver rather than iron, though the metal's purity is less important than the intent behind its use. The practitioner must repeatedly stab the effigy while reciting the incantation, creating what Brotherhood texts call wounds in the barrier between Mundus and the Void, allowing the Night Mother to perceive the request. The incantation contains linguistic elements dating back to early First Era Dunmeri dialects, suggesting it originated with the Night Mother herself rather than being developed later by the Brotherhood. Analysis of the prayer reveals complex rhythmic patterns that create what magical theorists call mimetic resonance sound, combinations that pierce magical barriers more effectively than ordinary speech. This is why the incantation must be repeated exactly as written, without substitution or abbreviation. The ritual must be performed repeatedly over several days, usually at night during hours when the boundary between Mundus and the Void grows thinner. Brotherhood texts recommend a minimum of 5 consecutive nights, corresponding to the 5 children sacrificed by the Night Mother. Each session should last at least an hour, with the incantation repeated continuously throughout. This repetition serves both magical and psychological functions, building the energy needed to attract the Night Mother's attention while testing the practitioner's commitment to their deadly request. The metaphysical aspects of the Black Sacrament have been studied by imperial scholars, though such research is controversial and mostly theoretical. The prevailing explanation from the Arcane University's Department of Prohibited Magics suggests the ritual creates a sympathetic anchor in the Void, connecting to the Night Mother's consciousness and drawing her attention to the practitioner's location and intent. The repeated stabbing combined with the incantation strengthens this anchor until it becomes strong enough for the Night Mother to detect across metaphysical boundaries. What makes the sacrament particularly unusual among Tamrielic rituals is that it requires no magical skill from the practitioner. Unlike most effective ceremonies that demand at least basic magical ability, The Black Sacrament can be performed by anyone with the necessary components and sufficient determination. This accessibility explains its survival despite imperial prohibitions. Any citizen with a strong enough grievance can potentially contact the Brotherhood, regardless of their social status or magical training. When performed correctly, the ritual creates what Brotherhood texts describe as a whisper in the void that the Night Mother perceives. She then passes the contract details to the current listener, who assigns a speaker to contact the client. The time between completing the sacrament and Brotherhood contact can vary from hours to weeks, depending on factors such as the group's operational tempo, the proximity of available assassins, and the Night Mother's own inscrutable priorities. The metaphysical link between the sacrament, the Night Mother, and the listener is one of the Brotherhood's most closely guarded secrets. Unlike Daedric summoning rituals, which establish direct communication between worshipper and prince, the Black Sacrament creates an asymmetrical connection. The practitioner cannot see or hear the Night Mother. They only send their request into the void, hoping for a response. Only the listener can receive the Night Mother's communication, acting as the essential intermediary in this spiritual exchange. This structure establishes a unique religious framework within the Brotherhood's operations. Unlike most faith-based groups that permit direct prayer to their gods, the Brotherhood tightly controls all communication with their deity through the Night Mother. This exclusive access reinforces the group's hierarchy and prevents unauthorized factions from asserting a valid connection to the divine without official approval. The listener's ability to hear the Night Mother is not bound by physical location, though closeness to her remains reportedly enhances the bond. Historical records show listeners receiving contract details while far from her body, indicating a spiritual rather than physical link. However, when her remains have been damaged or endangered, communications often became weaker or disjointed, suggesting some connection between her physical form and spiritual presence. Once the Night Mother delivers a contract to the listener, the Brotherhood's internal process begins. The listener documents the assignment, noting details about the target and client location, then passes it to a speaker overseeing that area. The speaker, or more often their silencer, contacts the client directly to finalize terms and collect payment. Over time, the Brotherhood's payment methods have evolved in response to changing economic systems across Tamriel. In the early First Era, compensation often came through barter such as goods, land, or political favors. A sanctuary ledger from near Skingrad details payments including 12 acres of farmland, a mysterious Dwemer artifact, and the secret name of a bound Daedroth. As currency systems became more standardized, the Brotherhood increasingly accepted gold, but remained open to alternative payments from influential clients with limited wealth. By the Third Era, they had developed advanced financial systems, including investments in legitimate businesses that provided both revenue and cover. The Shaidenhall Sanctuary, for example, held stakes in trading firms operating between Cyrodiil and Morrowind, enabling discreet movement of funds and personnel across borders. Contract pricing is determined through a complex formula. The target's prominence heavily influences the cost. Eliminating a Jarl or Count commands more than dealing with a disruptive merchant. Other pricing factors include security challenges such as bodyguards, magical defenses, and logistical complications, as well as specific stipulations about how the assassination must appear. A job requiring the death to look accidental costs more than one with no such constraints. Interestingly, pricing can also reflect the client's motives and the moral character of the target. Requests deemed acts of justice against truly vile individuals sometimes receive reduced rates, while jobs driven by petty motives may cost more. This policy reflects the Brotherhood's view of themselves not simply as hired killers, but as agents of Sithis, delivering a darker form of justice to those they believe deserve death. Payment is typically required in advance, and no refunds are given regardless of the outcome. While this has caused occasional disputes, the Brotherhood's consistent reliability helps maintain trust. Historical records show very few instances of failed contracts once payment was accepted, a record that supports their premium pricing. Throughout Tamriel's history, several high-profile contracts highlight the Brotherhood's effectiveness. Among the most notable was the killing of Emperor Pelagius Septim I in 3E41. Though official accounts claim he died of illness, Brotherhood records assert he was poisoned in a way that perfectly imitated a natural disease. The contract is believed to have originated from within the Elder Council, though the identity of the specific council member was erased from Brotherhood records during a later internal purge. The assassination of High King Log of Skyrim in 2E431 stands out as another major Brotherhood mission. While historical sources claim Log died from battle injuries, Brotherhood documents describe a carefully planned operation involving a compromised bodyguard and a poisoned blade designed to ensure any wound would be fatal. The contract is thought to have been ordered by Log's eventual successor, though no conclusive proof exists. Not all of the Brotherhood's significant targets were political leaders. The killing of Archmagister Varus of the Mages Guild in 3E172 demonstrated the Brotherhood's capacity to bypass magical defenses. Varus had created advanced warding spells to detect and repel assassins, which he believed made him invulnerable. However, the assigned assassin sabotaged the components Varus used to renew his wards, rendering them useless while still appearing active. The Brotherhood takes a highly thorough approach to fulfilling contracts. Unlike mercenaries or bandits who might simply claim a kill, Brotherhood members must provide concrete proof such as a body part, a detailed account of the death, or, in notable cases, wait for public confirmation of the target's demise before reporting back. After a successful mission is verified, the Brotherhood performs a ritual to honor Sithis' acceptance of the soul. This ritual varies by location but generally includes burning nightshade and offering prayers of gratitude. Some sanctuaries also display tokens from important contracts at dedicated shrines to Sithis and the Night Mother. The Brotherhood maintains detailed records for both practical and spiritual reasons. Practically, the records help track contract trends, recognize security threats, and preserve effective methods. Spiritually, they serve as a record of souls sent to Sithis, affirming the Brotherhood's devotion. It is believed that these records will be presented to Sithis at the end of the mortal world as evidence of the Brotherhood's service. While the Brotherhood keeps active contracts secret, completed ones are documented with surprising honesty, often noting any complications encountered. These records offer historical insights that are missing from mainstream accounts, uncovering hidden motives and connections behind significant events. Scholars who have examined these documents have sometimes reinterpreted historical narratives, though such interpretations are controversial. The Brotherhood's contract system, centered on the Black Sacrament, has endured centuries of persecution, internal conflict, and social change. Its resilience is credited to the system's mix of accessibility, reliability, and mystical authority. The sacrament serves as a gatekeeping ritual, requiring commitment and devotion, which helps maintain the organization's secrecy and spiritual alignment. Throughout Tamriel's violent history, some Brotherhood assassinations have had major historical consequences. These high-impact killings reflect the Brotherhood's far-reaching influence, even if official records often obscure their role. The assassination of Emperor Titus Mede III in 4E 201 is likely the most consequential contract of the Fourth Era. Mede, who ruled during the unstable aftermath of the Great War, was widely criticized for signing the White Gold Concordat, viewed by many as a humiliating peace with the Aldmeri Dominion. This created numerous enemies, though the identity of the individual who performed the Black Sacrament remains unknown. Records from the destroyed Falkreath Sanctuary offer rare and detailed accounts of the operation. The contract demanded not just the Emperor's death, but that it happened specifically while he was aboard his personal ship, the Kataraya, during his visit to Skyrim. This condition made the mission significantly more challenging, and the payment reflected that. The Kataraya was heavily guarded, with elite Penitus Oculatus agents specially trained to stop assassination attempts. The assassin assigned to the job used a complex strategy, starting by eliminating secondary targets to get closer to the Emperor. They infiltrated the home of the Gourmet, a renowned chef in the Pale, killed him, and took his identity to gain access to Castle Dur in Solitude. Disguised as the Gourmet, the assassin poisoned the Emperor's body double at a diplomatic event, causing confusion that eventually allowed them to reach the real Emperor on the Kataraya. What made this assassination particularly remarkable was the Emperor's apparent awareness of the attempt. According to the assassin's report, the Emperor showed no surprise when confronted, saying he had accepted his fate and anticipated the Brotherhood's role. This suggests that Imperial intelligence may have discovered the plan but failed to stop either. More intriguingly, that factions within the Empire may have orchestrated the killing to enable a political shift during a fragile time. The Emperor's death created a power vacuum that deepened the Empire's already unstable political situation in the Fourth Era. With no clear successor, the Elder Council took temporary control, but struggled to maintain unity against internal separatists and external Aldmeri pressure. Military leaders in the provinces began acting more independently, especially in Skyrim, where a civil war further weakened Imperial control, regardless of which side Stormcloaks or Imperials won. This fragmentation served Aldmeri interests directly. Documents intercepted in 4E2 showed that Thalmor viewed the Emperor's death as a fortunate event that sped up the Empire's decline. These documents also revealed plans to use succession disputes to demand further concessions beyond those in the White Gold Concordat, especially around the suppression of Talos worship. The assassination also had economic effects. Trade routes already affected by Skyrim's civil war faced more uncertainty as merchants questioned the Empire's stability. Records from the East Empire Company in 4E 2123 showed a 23% drop in shipping along northern routes, with rising prices for essential goods in imperial lands. This economic strain further weakened public trust in the central government, contributing to a cycle of declining imperial influence. Another complex case in the Brotherhood's history involved the death of King Lysandus of Daggerfall in 3E43. Although the Brotherhood was widely believed to be responsible, they were not involved. Officially, Lysandus was said to have died heroically in battle during the War of Bettany, but later investigations revealed he had been murdered in his tent the night before the Battle of Cringane Field. The operation was so professionally executed, breaching several layers of security without witnesses and using Brotherhood-like methods, that many assumed it was their work. Local authorities, aware of the Brotherhood's skills and reputation, naturally suspected them, especially since Lysandus's death benefited certain political groups in the region. However, Brotherhood records from a sanctuary in Rivet showed no contract for Lysandus. Internal documents from that time expressed annoyance at being blamed for a job they didn't do, as it gave them publicity without payment, something the group found frustrating. The real assassin was later revealed to have been hired by Lord Woodbourne of Wayrest, using Underking agents rather than the Brotherhood. This case highlights how the Brotherhood's reputation often led to false accusations in political killings, which ironically enhanced their mystique, while allowing the true culprits to go unnoticed. Regardless of who was responsible, Lysandus's death had major consequences, altering the political dynamics of the Iliac Bay region and contributing to the chain of events that led to the phenomenon known as the Warp in the West. Is this conversation helpful so far? A pivotal event reshaped the region's political landscape. The assassination in question serves as a reminder that even killings wrongly linked to the Brotherhood can have lasting political consequences. One of the Brotherhood's most extensive undertakings occurred in 3E433, with the coordinated assassinations of Emperor Uriel Septim VII's heirs. However, evidence indicates they were unknowingly part of a broader plot. Within days, the Emperor's 3 legitimate sons, Crown Prince Geldal, Prince Enman, and Prince Ebel, were killed, sparking the succession crisis that led to the Oblivion Crisis. Documents from the Chidinhal Sanctuary show that each assassination was contracted separately by different clients, creating the impression of unrelated events. Geldal was killed during a hunting trip when a disguised assassin handed him a poisoned wineskin. Enman's death appeared to be a bedroom accident, but was actually a meticulously staged event involving a falling chandelier. Ebel died during what he believed to be a secret meeting with a noblewoman, but was, in fact, an encounter with an assassin who used a rare contact poison. The contracts required each death to look accidental or unrelated, raising the cost and demanding the Brotherhood's top assassins. This implies that the client had significant resources and a strategic mind. Although the Brotherhood completed the contracts effectively, later developments suggest they were manipulated by the Mythic Dawn cult as part of a larger plan. The timing just before the Emperor's own assassination and the opening of the Oblivion Gates was too precise to be a coincidence. Recovered Mythic Dawn writings mention hidden allies clearing the path for their goals, indicating the cult likely used intermediaries to arrange the killings. The deaths of the heirs created the exact situation needed for their plan. An empire without a ruler to maintain the Dragonfires, yet stable enough to delay recognition of the threat. If even one heir had survived, the fires could have been relit, potentially stopping the Oblivion Crisis. These assassinations thus exemplify how the Brotherhood's operational success inadvertently enabled a disaster they neither intended nor foresaw. Following the crisis, Brotherhood internal records show that they introduced stricter vetting of contracts to avoid being exploited in similar schemes, reflecting an understanding of their unintentional role in the invasion. A contrasting case arose with the death of High King Torig in 4E201. Though the Brotherhood was suspected, clear evidence pointed elsewhere. Torig died in a formal duel with Ulfric Stormcloak, but rumors circulated that the Brotherhood had weakened him beforehand or aided Ulfric through alchemical means. These rumors where politically motivated Torig's allies preferred claims of assassination over honorable defeat. Likewise, the Empire supported this narrative to strengthen legal action against Ulfric. Brotherhood records from that time confirm no contract was taken against Torig. One document states, "The Nord's death belongs to the voice, not our blades. Let the bear claim his own kills." This shows the Brotherhood was aware they were being used as scapegoats. However, in line with their standard policy, they did not publicly address the accusations. In the year 3E433, troubling intelligence reached the Black Hand, indicating that a traitor might be operating within the Cheydinhole Sanctuary. Missions began to fail under suspicious conditions. Assassins died during operations that should have been straightforward. Critical information about the sanctuary's defenses appeared in reports from Imperial intelligence. Most alarming of all was evidence suggesting that Black Hand communications had been accessed, threatening the entire organization's security. After an extended investigation, the Black Hand concluded that a traitor was indeed within Cheydinhole. Although their identity remained unknown, the nature of the breaches suggested deliberate sabotage rather than mere error. The infiltrator had operated with skill and precision, gradually destabilizing Brotherhood operations from within. Given Cheydinhole's importance as a major sanctuary in Sir-Deal, the threat was deemed too great to ignore. The Black Hand resorted to an ancient and rarely used directive known as the Purificationa sweeping measure that called for the complete elimination of all members within a compromised sanctuary in order to prevent further damage. The logic was harsh. If the traitor's identity couldn't be confirmed, then removing everyone would ensure the traitor was among the dead. Lucian Lachance, as the sanctuary speaker, was tasked with carrying out this grim order. While he was the obvious choice to enforce the directive, it was also a deeply personal burden. Records show that Lachance initially opposed the decision, arguing for a more focused investigation to avoid killing loyal members. However, the rest of the Black Hand insisted that immediate action was necessary to prevent further harm. Lachance's private journals, discovered decades later in a hidden chamber near Fort Farragut, reveal his inner turmoil. "I have shared meals with these brothers and sisters," he wrote. "I have guided their hands and seen their devotion to Sai. Now I must kill them not because they have broken our laws, but because we cannot tell the faithful from the traitor. The Void may understand, but I do not know if I ever will." The execution of the purification required precise coordination to ensure no one escaped. Lachance, demonstrating the strategic acumen for which he was known, chose not to carry out the killings himself, a nearly impossible task given the member's skill. Instead, he enlisted an outsider, a relatively new recruit to the Brotherhood, one who had shown exceptional promise but had little connection to those in Cheydinhole. This individual, later identified in historical accounts as the hero of Quach, had already completed several successful assignments but remained largely unknown within the sanctuary. Their anonymity made them the ideal choice to carry out the purge. members of the sanctuary wouldn't immediately see them as a danger, allowing closer access than even Lachans could achieve. LaShawn supplied the operative with detailed knowledge about each member's routines, strengths, and vulnerabilities. He also provided customized poisons capable of bypassing the alchemical resistance many assassins had developed during training. Most importantly, he arranged for a temporary relaxation of standard security protocols through official means, enabling the operative to move freely without arousing suspicion. The purge took place over roughly 3 days during the evening star of 3E433. The agent eliminated the sanctuary members one at a time, using various methods to isolate them. Some were killed in their sleep using poison blades. Others were ambushed during training sessions in the more secluded areas of the sanctuary. A few members, realizing something was wrong, tried to escape but were intercepted before they could leave Cheydinhal. Vicent Falti, a 300-year-old vampire and the sanctuary's training master, was especially hard to defeat due to his undead nature and centuries of battle experience. Fragmented accounts suggest the agent ultimately used silver weapons, blessed by a priest of Arcatools, more commonly used against the Brotherhood than by it. Antonita Marie, a poison expert, detected the operative's action sooner than most and tried to set a trap with her own toxins. Their confrontation in the alchemy lab caused significant destruction, damaging rare ingredients and texts before the agent prevailed. Emrahar, a Khajiit mage skilled in destruction magic, recognized the agent from prior brief encounters but failed to grasp their intent until it was too late. Despite his strong magical defenses, he was defeated using countermeasures provided by LaShawn's. Tilindril, a master archer, attempted to flee Cheydinhal once she realized the scale of the attack. She reached the city stables, but the agent caught up with her. Locals later reported hearing a struggle, mistaking it for restless horses. Gagron Grolmog, an orc known for his direct methods, confronted the agent head-on. Though his strength and armor gave him an early edge, the sanctuary's confined spaces worked against him, allowing the more agile agent to gain the upper hand. Oshiva and Tanava, Argonian twins, raised within the Brotherhood from infancy, died protecting each other in the sanctuary's main chamber. Their lifelong coordination nearly allowed them to outmatch the agent, but a specially crafted poison targeting Argonian physiology eventually led to their defeat. The complete elimination of the sanctuary's members save for the operative was unprecedented in the Brotherhood's history. Never before had an entire sanctuary been wiped out under orders from within. The psychological effect on the rest of the organization was significant, with members elsewhere beginning to fear that similar purges could occur if deemed necessary. The corruption that triggered the operation turned out to be more deeply rooted than originally believed. Previously, the leadership had kept some distance from the daily activities of the sanctuary. However, new protocols introduced consistent direct communication between members and leaders. This increased transparency was intended to avoid the misunderstandings and mistrust that had once allowed Bellamont to manipulate events. Despite the difficulties, the Cheydinhal sanctuary recovered impressively. Within 2 years of the cleansing, it was fully operational again, efficiently managing contracts across eastern Cyrodiil, maintaining its former standards. Although the membership was smaller, it was tightly unified, likely due to a shared understanding of the sanctuary's past, which created deeper connections than standard training alone. This revitalized sanctuary later played a key role during the Oblivion Crisis, when many Brotherhood locations across Tamriel were attacked or destroyed by DRI forces. With improved defenses and dedicated members, Cheydinhole became a refuge for displaced Brotherhood agents. The leadership lessons learned from the cleansing, especially the importance of verifying orders and questioning suspicious instruction, helped the group stay united during times of disrupted communication between sanctuaries. The reforms that followed made the organization more resilient, helping it endure later challenges such as the Oblivion Crisis, the Great War, and the Dragon Crisis of the Fourth Era. For members, the purification became a critical lesson passed down to all recruits. It emphasized that loyalty to the cause and the Night Mother must surpass personal relationships, but also warned that unquestioning obedience could open the door to manipulation. This careful balance continues to influence Brotherhood operations in the Fourth Era, affecting everything from recruitment to contract verification. The Brotherhood situation shifted drastically with the outbreak of the Great War in 4E 171. As the conflict between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion absorbed the focus of military forces, it also created new risks for the Assassin's Guild. Initially, the instability seemed like an opportunity for more contracts, but instead signaled the start of the Brotherhood's steep decline. Emperor Titus Mede II understood that internal threats had to be neutralized before facing the external challenge of the Dominion. Imperial intelligence had long considered the Brotherhood a dangerous force, responsible for high-profile assassinations that undermined authority. Unlike his predecessors who simply reacted, Mede took proactive steps to dismantle the group. In 4E 170, just before the Dominion's ultimatum, he expanded the Penitus Oculatus, the elite security force that had replaced the Blades as his protectors. This included a new division dedicated entirely to eliminating the Dark Brotherhood. Commander Morrow, a seasoned leader from anti-bandit campaigns in Skyrim, was appointed to lead this effort, bringing structured military strategy to what had once been treated as a law enforcement issue. The Penitus Oculatus operated differently from past efforts. Instead of reacting to attacks, Morrow's agents sought out Brotherhood sanctuaries through a broad intelligence network. They infiltrated criminal groups, tracked suspected contacts, and offered generous rewards for tips leading to sanctuary locations. This bounty system proved particularly damaging. Informants came from unexpected sources, including disillusioned former Brotherhood members. The Bruma Sanctuary was the first to fall in late 4E 170. Reports from the Penitus Oculatus describe a well-coordinated assault before dawn, involving over 30 agents and battle mages from the Synod. Although Brotherhood members resisted fiercely, they were outmatched by the attacking force. 17 were killed, and 3 were taken alive. These prisoners provided critical intelligence that hastened the collapse of other sanctuaries. The Skingrad Sanctuary was compromised within weeks due to documents retrieved from Bruma. Learning from the earlier Bruma raid, the Penitus Oculus adjusted their methods to prevent any chance of escape. They sealed all known exit routes and released a paralytic gas developed by Imperial alchemists before deploying their forces. This tactic proved highly effective, leading to the capture of nearly the entire sanctuary with minimal Imperial losses. By mid-4E 71, As the Great War officially began with the Dominion's invasion of Hammerfell and Cyrodiil, 4 major sanctuaries in Imperial territory had already been lost. The leadership of the organization struggled to respond to this new, coordinated offensive. For generations, they had believed that their spiritual connection to the Night Mother would protect them from worldly threats. However, the campaign by the Penitus Oculus shattered this belief, proving that focused military action could endanger their survival. The war itself posed further difficulties. As Imperial and Dominion armies fought across Tamriel, the chaos disrupted the criminal networks the group relied on for contracts and intelligence. Clients redirected funds to support war efforts, reducing the demand for their services. Additionally, increased military activity in cities made travel between provinces far more difficult for their members. In 4E72, the sanctuary in Hierro was lost under different circumstances. Unlike the others taken by Imperial forces, it was destroyed during a pirate raid on the city amid wartime confusion. The raiders, likely unaware of the sanctuary's nature, stumbled upon it while looting nearby buildings. They killed the unsuspecting assassins inside and seized a large cache of valuables, including ancient relics, extensive records, and funds collected over centuries. This loss had far-reaching consequences. The Hierro Sanctuary had served as the main financial hub in the province, supporting operations across the region. Its destruction caused immediate financial strain on remaining cells, and the loss of its archives, which contained unique historical documents and assassination techniques, was even more damaging over the long term. The organization's decline accelerated as the war continued. By 4E74, Imperial reports showed that membership had dropped by roughly 70% compared to pre-war numbers. Those who remained often operated alone, abandoning the long-standing sanctuary-based structure. This fragmentation weakened them further, as isolated individuals lacked the support and shared expertise once provided by the organization. In Skyrim, the group maintained a stronger foothold during the war, largely due to the province's distance from the primary battle zones. The Falkreath Sanctuary, hidden within dense pine forests, grew in importance as members from other regions sought refuge. While this temporarily strengthened their position, it also created a risk by concentrating too many members in a single location. The war's end in 4E75 with the signing of the White Gold Concordat did not bring relief. Though the Penitus Oculus had shifted some focus to the war, the conclusion of major conflicts allowed them to resume their campaign against the remaining cells with renewed intensity. Commander Morrow, after a successful mission against a group of assassins, was given greater authority to pursue Brotherhood members beyond provincial borders, an expansion of power that had previously been restricted by local jurisdictions. During a time of decline for the Brotherhood, leadership increasingly shifted to Astrid, who led the Falri Sanctuary in Skyrim. Unlike earlier leaders who rose through the ranks with the blessing of the Night Mother, Astrid took control out of necessity and strong personal influence. Her past is unclear in historical accounts, but Brotherhood records indicate she joined around the year 4160, showing exceptional skills in stealth and combat. Astrid's leadership marked a major change from Brotherhood tradition, where past leaders had strictly followed the 5 tenets and showed unwavering devotion to the Night Mother. Astrid chose a more practical and secular path. Under her guidance, the Falri Sanctuary operated more like a group of professional mercenaries, than a spiritual order. This change reflected both her personal beliefs and a response to the Brotherhood's near collapse. One of her most controversial decisions was to distance her sanctuary from the Night Mother. When given the chance to recover the Night Mother's corpse from a compromised site in Cyril, Astrid refused, seeing it as a burden rather than a sacred object. This decision marked a major break from the Brotherhood's belief system, where the Night Mother had always been considered the vital connection to their divine purpose. This shift also changed how contracts were obtained. Traditionally, the Brotherhood used the Black Sacrament, with the Night Mother relaying requests to a listener. But after the devastation of the Great War left them without an active listener, and with Astrid unwilling to revive that role, the Falry Sanctuary turned to underground criminal networks. Contracts now came from informants, corrupt officials, and the group's own reputation rather than spiritual sources. Recruitment practices were altered as well. Previously, new members had to prove both their killing ability and spiritual alignment, viewing death as a form of service. Astrid, however, focused mainly on practical skill and loyalty to her leadership. This led to a membership that was effective, but spiritually disconnected, weakening the Brotherhood's unique identity. By the year 4 E200, the Fallwreath Sanctuary had a smaller but unusually diverse membership. This included Fiza's Krex, an elderly master of destruction magic, Gabriella, a Dunmer expert in alchemy and poisons, Vizara, said to be the last of the Shadow Scales, and an armed werewolf named J-Jorn, who handled brute force assignments. This diversity enabled the Sanctuary to accept a broader range of contracts than traditional Brotherhood branches. While Astrid's departure from tradition allowed for operational flexibility, it also left the Sanctuary spiritually exposed. Without the Night Mother's guidance, contract decisions rested solely on Astrid's judgment, and with no moral framework from the 5 tenets, loyalty to Astrid was the only thing keeping internal conflict at bay. This system worked as long as her leadership went unquestioned, but it carried the risk of collapse if her authority weakened. Meanwhile, the Penitus Oculatus continued to pressure what remained of the Brotherhood during the post-war era. Their strategy shifted from broad military attacks on hideouts to the precise elimination of individuals identified through intelligence networks. This new approach proved highly effective, especially against Brotherhood cells that had become increasingly isolated and lacked central coordination. By the year 4 E200, Imperial estimates placed the number of active Brotherhood members across all provinces at fewer than 30, a drastic drop from the hundreds that existed before the Great War. The campaign intensified in 4 E201 after the assassination of the commander's son, which was attributed to the Fallwreath Sanctuary. This personal loss led to a concentrated effort to locate and destroy that particular site. Ironically, the killing had been part of a larger plan to assassinate Emperor Titus Mede II, which only hastened the sanctuary's downfall. The commander's grief-fueled resolve overcame bureaucratic limits that had previously constrained operations in Skyrim. The destruction of the Fallwreath Sanctuary in 4 E201 followed a pattern seen in earlier Penitus Oculatus operations, though with increased intensity. Agents first sealed off all escape routes, and then set the building ablaze instead of using gas, partly due to the structure's wooden design, and partly to ensure total destruction. The fire consumed nearly all of the sanctuary's members, with only a few believed to have escaped. Despite this near-total loss, the Brotherhood showed remarkable resilience. The remaining members abandoned permanent bases, operating instead from temporary locations and communicating through dead drops and coded messages. This compartmentalization made them more difficult to trace, but also restricted their capabilities and reduced the number of contracts they could handle. Crucially, the survivors returned to traditional practices, including the re-establishment of the Night Mother's importance and the reinstatement of the listener role. This shift was both a practical response since previous networks had been compromised and a philosophical realization that straying from their core beliefs had made them vulnerable. The Brotherhood's presence also shrank geographically. Once active across all of Tamriel, by 4E201, their operations were mostly confined to Skyrim, with some activity in Cyrodiil and High Rock. Former strongholds in Morrowind, Hammerfell, and Black Marsh had been reduced to lone assassins working independently. Their methods also changed. Where assassinations had once carried symbolic signatures like the Black Hand for intimidation and ritual value, survivors began favoring subtlety making. Killings looked like accidents, random violence, or natural deaths to avoid drawing attention. This was a direct response to growing Imperial efficiency at identifying their work. The Brotherhood's financial stability suffered, along with their numbers. Previously, they had maintained reserves across many sanctuaries, allowing for long-term planning and operations. With those sanctuaries destroyed, remaining members had to rely on immediate payment for each contract, limiting their ability to rebuild or train new recruits. Despite these severe setbacks, historical records show the Brotherhood was never fully wiped out. Even at their lowest point following the fall of the Fallwreath Sanctuary, a small core group preserved the traditions and expertise that had defined them for centuries. Their enduring connection to their beliefs and the Night Mother gave them a form of resilience that outlasted even the most systematic efforts to destroy them. The Great War and the decline that followed did not mark the end of the Dark Brotherhood, but rather its most profound transformation since its separation from the Morag Tong. Once a vast organization spanning the continent, it was reduced to only a few loyal assassins. Despite this near collapse, the Brotherhood maintained its core identity. The remaining members returned to traditional rituals and spiritual beliefs, setting the stage for a possible revival if future conditions favored their unique blend of devotion and deadly skill. The Blade of Woe is considered the most iconic weapon associated with the Dark Brotherhood. This dagger traces back to the group's earliest history. Unlike typical heirlooms passed down through generations, each Blade of Woe is believed to be a manifestation of the same mystical weapon, not just a physical item. Records from the sanctuary at Cheydinhal suggest the original blade was forged in the late First Era from a mysterious black metal that has defied identification through modern analysis. The weapon's appearance has remained unchanged over centuries. The blade features a forward curve influenced by Avariri design, while its hilt includes distinct Dunmerry elements, reflecting the Brotherhood's roots. The metal absorbs light rather than reflecting it, creating a dark void-like effect, described in texts as a physical fragment of Sithis. When the blade cuts flesh, the wound briefly releases a shadowy mist, a magical phenomenon that has not been successfully replicated. The blade's importance lies not only in its form, but in its ceremonial use within the Brotherhood. When a new listener is chosen, they receive the blade during a rite known as the Binding of the Void. In this ritual, held before the Night Mother's corpse, the listener cuts their palm with the dagger, letting their blood coat the blade. This act is said to forge a metaphysical link between the listener, the blade, and Sithis. This connection gives the blade its unique enchantments. Unlike ordinary enchanted weapons that rely on soul gems, the Blade of Woe draws power from each life it claims. Those slain by it suffer not only physical death, but a deeper spiritual severing, with their souls pulled into the void rather than continuing to the afterlife. This made the blade especially feared among the devout, as it threatened both life and soul. The blade is passed between listeners according to strict rules found in the Litany of Blood, a rare Brotherhood text. When a listener dies, their silencer must retrieve the blade and return it to the Night Mother's resting place. It remains untouched until a new listener is chosen, at which point it is said to move on its own to the selected individual and event. Some dismiss as staged, though witnesses report seeing the blade move without visible cause. In addition to its symbolic role, the Blade of Woe is highly effective for assassinations. Its enchantment not only drains a victim's life force, but transfers some of that energy to the wielder, allowing them to maintain strength during long missions. This vampiric effect occurs without the spiritual taint of typical soul magic, as the energy flows through Sithis rather than being stored in a gem. The blade is also nearly undetectable by normal magical wards. Standard detection spells fail to recognize it, enabling assassins to carry it into otherwise secure areas. This trait comes from what internal texts describe as the blade's partial composition of void essence. To most detection spells, it appears more as an absence than a presence. When wounds caused by the blade are examined, they show a unique feature: they resist magical healing. While ordinary injuries can be quickly treated with restoration magic, cuts from this blade respond poorly. They do eventually heal on their own, but much more slowly, and even the strongest healing spells leave visible scars. This made the blade especially effective against those with access to magic-based healing, as even a non-lethal injury could disable them long enough for blood loss or poison to be fatal. Historically, many high-profile assassinations have been linked to this weapon. One example is the death of a prominent chancellor in the year 4E10, who was killed by a single, precise cut to the throat, with witnesses claiming the wound seemed to bleed shadows instead of blood. Similarly, after the supposed battlefield death of a king, forensic mages discovered a wound consistent with the blade's properties, implying involvement by the organization despite official records blaming combat injuries. The group's distinctive armor designs have evolved greatly over time to meet changing tactical needs while keeping symbolic features tied to their beliefs. The earliest armor, developed in the late First Era, was inspired by designs from another group, but modified to reflect theological differences. These early sets, found in burial sites near a major city, were made from light leather dyed a deep red-black using void salts and human blood. Metal parts were minimal to keep movements quiet, and only vital areas had added protection. One signature element was a handprint symbol over the heart knot, the later Black Hand emblem, but a more literal depiction of a divine blessing. By the mid-Second Era, their armor had advanced into what researchers call void-infused leather. This material was made through a complex process recorded in a recovered text, involving tanning leather with nightshade extract, void salts, and the ashes of a deceased member. Even without further enchantment, this created armor with natural magical properties. It offered excellent stealth by absorbing sound and light, making the wearer harder to detect. Despite its light weight, it was surprisingly durable, distributing impact across the garment. It also gave some protection from magical detection, acting like a built-in chameleon spell. In the Third Era, the armor was further refined into what is commonly known as shrouded armor, the version most recognized today. This design featured integrated enchantments in every part, forming a complete system rather than just protective gear. The chest piece included a life detection enchantment to sense nearby heartbeats. The boots silenced all movement sounds from the lower body. The gloves enhanced the wearer's precision for more effective use of blades and poisons. The hood was especially noteworthy. It didn't just hide the face, but used magic to blur the wearer's identity from memory itself. Witnesses who glimpsed the face of a Brotherhood assassin while they were wearing their hood would quickly find their memory of the details fading within hours. Only a faint impression remained nowhere near enough to identify the person, though not as powerful as the mythical cowl of Nocturnal. This effect still offered enough concealment to support Brotherhood missions without needing outside magical aid. During the Fourth Era, Brotherhood armor reflected both a step back in magical advancement and a move toward specialization, largely due to reduced resources. With fewer skilled enchanters and limited rare materials, the armor prioritized practical function over magical features. It was typically made of layered, treated leather, reinforced with small metal plates at key points to balance defense and movement. While it lacked the full magical enchantments seen in earlier eras, the armor was treated alchemically to darken in shadows and lighten in bright environments, creating a form of adaptive camouflage that didn't rely on constant magic. Variations in the armor across regions were shaped by local needs and the Brotherhood's fragmented organization during certain times. In Skyrim, the local branch used heavier armor with frost-resistant linings to survive the cold. In other regions, some versions used moon sugar-treated fibers for greater flexibility, supporting the agile fighting styles of Khajiit members. In Hammerfell, Brotherhood gear was blended with traditional Redguard armor designs, maintaining stealth but resembling local attire for daytime blending. Poison making was among the Brotherhood's most advanced and secretive arts. Unlike ordinary assassins who used natural toxins, Brotherhood alchemists created complex formulas tailored for specific assassination purposes. Many of these remained unknown to outsiders until sanctuaries were overrun and their texts recovered. One such source, Agents of Shadow, found in the ruins of a sanctuary, described the Brotherhood's poison classifications based not just on lethality, but tactical use. These included fast-acting poisons for immediate kills, slow-working ones for delayed effects, mind-altering substances, and those that left no trace after death. Fast-acting poisons, like the infamous Void's Kissa mix of nightshade, imp stool, and human heart tissue, caused rapid respiratory failure and were used in missions where quick elimination was essential. This formula had to be prepared with great precision, using ingredients gathered under specific lunar phases and strict timing. Slow-acting poisons, called patient shadows, were designed to kill hours or even days after being administered, helping the assassin avoid suspicion. The most feared among them creeping void, imitated natural illness before suddenly causing total organ failure. It changed its structure as it worked, making detection and treatment extremely difficult. Mind-altering poisons, called mind mists, manipulated perception and behavior. One version, Whisper of Sigh, made from powdered wisp stalk and refined vampire dust, made victims highly suggestibly easy to manipulate or interrogate. Another, Night Terror, triggered such intense hallucinations that some victims harmed themselves fatally. The Trace Void class showed the Brotherhood's deep knowledge of how poisons acted after death. These were crafted to fully break down into natural compounds, leaving behind no clues. Scythes Embrace, the most advanced of this kind, dissolved into substances already found in decaying bodies, making even magical detection useless. Some poisons also used magic in addition to alchemy. These bound toxins were laced with soul energy, allowing them to bypass resistances or immunities that the target might otherwise have. Do you like this personality? Void-infused poisons contain small amounts of void salts that interfered with the victim's spiritual essence, preventing revival through standard necromantic means. These arcane enhancements required careful preparation by members trained in both alchemy and mystical arts and uncommon skills set outside the group. Equal importance was placed on the delivery methods of these poisons. Assassins used specialized tools, such as ultra-thin needles that could pierce skin undetected, poisoned coins that released toxins through prolonged contact, and treated parchment that became lethal when heated by candlelight. One clever technique involved silk gloves treated to handle toxic materials safely while transferring the poison through contact. To support their craft, the group maintained expansive gardens within their hidden sanctuaries, growing both common herbs, like nightshade, and rare plants, such as void bloom, which was believed to originate from areas affected by strange rifts in reality. The gardeners who managed these plants held respected roles due to their ability to produce essential, often unavailable ingredients. Beyond toxins, the group developed many specialized tools for their deadly missions. Mechanical inventions discovered in their sanctuaries revealed a deep understanding of assassination-focused engineering. These included foldable climbing claws for accessing secured windows, miniature water-breathing devices that could fit in a tooth cavity for aquatic escapes, and spring-loaded wrist sheaths that instantly deployed their signature blade, saving precious time in combat. Enchanted gear also played a key role in their operations. Aside from their iconic armor and blade, they used numerous magical items for specific purposes. Void stone esmal, enchanted obsidian pebbles offered brief invisibility during dangerous moments. Whisper pendants enabled silent communication between operatives during joint missions. Shadow stitching, a special thread used in their clothing, allowed for temporary repairs to gear while on long assignments. A ring known as the Night Weaver's Band, retrieved from a captured operative during the Third Era, showcased their practical approach to enchantments. The ring combined three magical effects: a chameleon spell that grew stronger in darkness, a silencing enchantment triggered by slow movement, and a life-sensing pulse activated by pressing a particular spot on the band. This trio of effects supported stealth and tracking while avoiding detection. Some of their relics reached legendary status, even within the group. One such item, the Scales of Pitiless Justice, was a mystical balance scale said to determine the moral worthiness of a target by weighing a personal item. According to tradition, if the target was deemed deserving of death, the scales would balance perfectly regardless of the item's actual weight. Though dismissed by scholars as trickery involving hidden enchantments, the assassins trusted its verdict. Another revered relic included the finger bones of the first leaders, preserved and wrapped in human skin, etched with one of the group's core tenets. These served as symbols of authority and were believed to protect the bearer from truth, compelling or deception, revealing magic, ensuring safety during dealings with clients or officials. A key figure's ascent through the ranks began not with a dramatic feat or spiritual sign, but with a single act of murder on the streets. Born to a humble family of vineyard workers in the West Weald, LaShawn showed an unusual interest in death from a young age. According to journals recovered from Fort Farragut, his first kill occurred at the age of 14 when he deliberately poisoned a local merchant who had deceived his family. The methodical nature of the act, using a slow-acting poison that mimicked illness, drew the attention of an observer from the Brotherhood stationed in the city. He was formally recruited in 3E396 by a speaker named Eris. LaShawn underwent his initial training at the Chidenal Sanctuary, quickly standing out for his skill with blades and deep understanding of the Brotherhood's spiritual beliefs. Unlike most recruits who focused on either the practical or religious side of their duties, LaShawn embraced both, treating every kill as both a tactical mission and a spiritual offering to Sithis. By 3E405, he had risen to the rank of Eliminator, handling assignments that required discretion and careful planning. His hallmark approach was to conduct long periods of surveillance before acting, sometimes observing a target for weeks to find vulnerabilities. This patience earned him a legendary reputation, and his discipline became a model for new recruits. Records from the time show he eliminated the paranoid battle mage, Thurin of Bruma, by posing as a gardener for 17 days, waiting for the mage's defenses to lapse during a seasonal ritual. In 3E412, LaShawn was promoted to speaker after successfully managing the Brotherhood's operations during an Imperial crackdown in the Gold Coast. When 3 assassins were captured near Anvil and exposed sanctuary locations under torture, he coordinated their elimination before they could reveal more, and relocated 2 sanctuaries without further loss. His strategic thinking and loyalty impressed the Black Hand, earning him a place among them. As a speaker, he oversaw Brotherhood operations in eastern Cyrodiil from the Chidenal Sanctuary. He expanded influence by building a network of informants among beggars and merchants, providing early warnings and contract leads. His leadership balanced adherence to tradition with adaptability, making his sanctuary especially effective. One of his key contributions was the overhaul of recruitment practices. Rather than relying on chance encounters, he developed a structured system to identify candidates with the right psychological profile, not just the capacity for violence. This led to higher quality recruits and improved retention. Despite his accomplishments, his career ended in betrayal. A fellow assassin, whose mother had once been killed by LaShawn during a sanctioned mission, plotted revenge. By planting false evidence, he turned the Black Hand against LaShawn. In 3E433, convinced of his betrayal, the Black Hand captured him near Applewatch Farm in the Gerall Mountains. What followed was a grim episode. He was tortured by fellow speakers, including the very one who had orchestrated his downfall. According to a witness, the methods used were designed to inflict maximum pain, showing their actions were fueled by rage rather than justice. When Lashan's silencer, the hero of Kvatch, discovered his remains, little of the former speaker was recognizable. In executing him, the Black Hand not only violated their own tenets, but also the core respect for death that their creed upheld. What should have been a clean act of execution became a disgraceful desecration. The full extent of Bellamont's betrayal was uncovered too late to help Lachance, but his influence on the Brotherhood endured well beyond his death. After Bellamont's plot was exposed, several reforms were adopted that mirrored Lachance's earlier suggestions, including stricter evidence verification and limits on the authority of the Black Hand. His systematic methods in carrying out assassinations continue to shape Brotherhood training practices into the Fourth Era, with many instructional materials citing his techniques as exemplary. Astrid's leadership of the Falkreath Sanctuary marked a sharp break from the Brotherhood's traditional hierarchy. Unlike leaders like Lachance, who rose through the ranks with the approval of the Night Mother, Astrid assumed control out of necessity during the Brotherhood's post-war decline. Her past before joining is only sparsely recorded, though documents note she joined after killing her uncle, a wealthy landowner in western Skyrim who had abused her for years. Under Astrid, the Falkreath Sanctuary adopted a more familial structure, emphasizing personal loyalty over formal ranks. She referred to members as siblings rather than by titles and made decisions collaboratively rather than issuing orders. This fostered strong internal bonds, but distanced the sanctuary from the Brotherhood's long-standing traditions and spiritual beliefs. Most notably, Astrid downplayed the role of the Night Mother and Sithis. Unlike older sanctuaries that were centered around shrines to these figures, hers included only modest altars placed in lesser-used rooms. This design reflected her belief that the Brotherhood should operate as a practical assassin's guild based on mutual gain rather than religious devotion. Her secular approach extended to how contracts were handled. Instead of relying on the Black Sacrament and divine guidance, she set up a network of informants in Skyrim cities who directed clients to the sanctuary. She personally reviewed contracts, focusing on factors like payment, risk, and political fallout, with little concern for their spiritual significance. This pragmatic strategy helped the sanctuary survive during a time when the Brotherhood was nearly wiped out. By being adaptable, Astrid kept operations going, while many other sanctuaries collapsed. Her leadership attracted skilled assassins from across Skyrim, including figures like the illusionist Gabriella and the werewolf Arnbjorn, whom she later married. In 4E201, the arrival of Cicero and the Night Mother's corpse forced Astrid to face the conflict between her leadership style and traditional Brotherhood identity. Her response revealed both her practicality and underlying insecurity. Though she allowed the Night Mother's remains into the sanctuary, she worked to prevent them from affecting her control. This included assigning a member to monitor Cicero's actions, showing that she valued authority over tradition. Astrid's greatest betrayal came when she struck a deal with Commander Morrow of the Penitus Oculatus, offering up a fellow sanctuary member in return for safety for herself and her allies. This act, one of the most serious breaches of Brotherhood principles, showed her desperation as the old power structure returned under a new listener and exposed her fundamental misunderstanding of the organization she tried to reshape. The tragic irony of her story lies in how it ended. After being severely burned in the very Penitus Oculatus raid she enabled, she was found dying in the ruined sanctuary. Her final act was to perform the Black Sacrament on herself, seeking atonement for her betrayal. By doing so, she finally accepted the spiritual roots of the Brotherhood she had spent her leadership ignoring. Cicero's path to becoming the Night Mother's keeper began in the Imperial City, where he once served as a standard assassin during the late Third Era. Early records describe him as highly capable, but not especially notable, in personality and efficient killer who completed his missions without the dramatic flair he would later be known for. His initial psychological assessment showed only a strong devotion to the organization and its core principles, which leaders viewed as a strength rather than a problem. The shift from a typical assassin to a mentally unstable guardian began during the Great War and the Brotherhood's subsequent decline. As sanctuaries were destroyed by Penitus Oculatus forces and members were lost, he remained one of the few who stayed loyal to the Night Mother. His personal journals, found in the Dawnstar Sanctuary, reflect growing despair as he watched both the Brotherhood's physical presence and its spiritual foundation crumble. He became the keeper in 4E89, not through the usual selection process, since the Brotherhood structure had already broken down, but through circumstance and personal resolve. When the previous keeper died during a raid near Bravel, he took it upon himself to safeguard the Night Mother's remains. This self-imposed duty became the central focus of his life, changing his role from assassin to guardian. The Keeper's responsibilities are detailed in the rare text, Whispers of the Mother, which outlines the rituals needed to preserve the Night Mother's body. These include applying specific oils, reciting prayers at certain times based on astrology, and performing a strict cleaning sequence. The solitary and demanding nature of this work, along with his growing isolation as the Brotherhood collapsed, created conditions ripe for mental decline. His journals provide disturbing insight into his psychological deterioration. Early entries are clinical, focusing on preservation methods. Over time, his writing becomes erratic, marked by odd punctuation, third-person references to himself, and imaginary dialogues with the Night Mother. By 4E95, his speech had become sing-song and manic, traits that defined his later behavior at the Falkreath Sanctuary. The key factor in his mental breakdown appears to be the Night Mother's silence. As keeper, he was devoted to her care, yet received no response or guidance since he was not the listener. This unreciprocated relationship led to intense cognitive dissonance. He gave his life to an entity that never acknowledged him, and his journals increasingly showed desperate attempts to interpret random events as messages from her. His journey to the Falkreath Sanctuary in 4E120 was his last effort to restore traditional Brotherhood practices. After hearing of this surviving sanctuary through scattered contacts, he transported the Night Mother's body across dangerous lands, avoiding patrols and bandits with a mix of careful planning and unpredictable actions. However, his arrival clashed immediately with the leader's methods, triggering a conflict that played a major role in the sanctuary's eventual downfall. The tension between him and the sanctuary leader went beyond personal disagreement. It reflected a deep ideological divide within the Brotherhood. He stood for strict tradition, absolute loyalty to the Night Mother, the listener's authority, and the Five Tenets. She represented a more pragmatic, flexible approach, valuing adaptation and shared leadership. Their failure to find common ground weakened the sanctuary at a time when it was vulnerable. His attack on another member, after believing the Night Mother had been disrespected, showed both his mental instability and his rigid adherence to tradition. Though this act broke the rule against harming fellow members, he He believed he was upholding the rule about honoring the Night Mother, revealing how his understanding of the Brotherhood's values had become warped. After this incident, he fled to the long-abandoned Dawnstar Sanctuary, a hidden location known only through his extensive knowledge of Brotherhood history. There, surrounded by remnants of the past in the form of spectral guardians, his mental state worsened as he waited for what he assumed would be his execution for breaking Brotherhood law. Cicero's unwavering loyalty became clear during his final encounter with the listener. Despite his apparent madness, he showed complete understanding of his role and the Brotherhood's customs. Historical records differ on whether he survived the confrontation, with some suggesting the listener spared him out of respect for his twisted but sincere devotion to the Night Mother. Regardless of his fate, Cicero's legacy remains complex, highlighting both the perils of obsession and the value of upholding tradition in times of decline. Among the Brotherhood's most unique figures was a vampire known for blending sophistication with deadly precision. Born in Hierro during the Second Era, he joined the Brotherhood nearly 300 years before his death in the Great Purification. Unlike others of his kind who concealed their nature, he was open about his vampirism within the Brotherhood, seeing it as an advantage rather than a flaw. He was a master combat instructor, training initiates in blade techniques that utilized vampiric speed and strength while promoting versatility beyond those abilities. His teachings stressed adaptability, producing assassins capable of both open combat and silent execution as missions demanded. His contributions went beyond combat. He introduced refined methods for analyzing and preparing for targets, leaving a lasting mark on Brotherhood practices. His partially preserved work, The Contemplative Killer, outlines a methodical approach to assassination that begins with deep psychological understanding of the target, not just physical weaknesses. This shifted the Brotherhood's focus toward treating targets as full individuals rather than obstacles. His experience as a vampire also shaped his spiritual insights. Having died in the conventional sense, yet continuing to exist, he offered a unique perspective on death and the void. His writings suggest the void represents transformation rather than nothing. Tunis, a view that influenced many during his long tenure as an instructor. In 4E201, the arrival of the last Dragonborn marked a turning point for the Brotherhood. The organization, once powerful, had dwindled to a few members, operating from a single sanctuary in Falkreath. While the Dragonborn is remembered for defeating Alduin and ending Skyrim's civil war, their role in reviving the Brotherhood was equally important, though less widely acknowledged. Initiation followed traditional customs, beginning with the assassination of Grelod the Kind, and culminating in recruitment during Sleeper ritual, dating back to the early Second Era. This signaled a return to old ways, even as the Brotherhood's leader remained unaware of the coming transformation. The sanctuary's destruction by Penitus Oculatus forces later that year nearly wiped out the Brotherhood. The assault, made possible by betrayal from within, left the sanctuary in ruins and most members dead. One fell defending the perimeter, his body riddled with arrows. Another died near the alchemy lab, her poisons unable to turn the tide. And a final defender, the last of a sacred order, perished, protecting younger members who also died in the blaze. This attack was meant to be the Brotherhood's end of final strike in a campaign that had lasted for decades. Instead, it became a moment of rebirth. Following the fall of secular leadership, the survival of the Dragonborn and possibly a few others formed the foundation for rebuilding. This marked a return to spiritual roots and traditional values, signaling a renewed beginning for the Brotherhood. More importantly, the Night Mother's body remained untouched despite the destruction of the sanctuary, preserving the crucial spiritual link that had defined the Brotherhood since its founding. With the Dragonborn recognized as the Listenerthi first in decades, the group now had both the spiritual authority and practical leadership needed for revival. Establishing the Dawnstar Sanctuary as the Brotherhood's new base served both a functional purpose and symbolized a new beginning. Situated on Skyrim's northern coast, the site had been abandoned since the Second Era and was known only through old Brotherhood records studied by Cicero during his time as keeper. Its remote location offered natural protection from discovery, while its closeness to Dawnstar's port allowed for easy access to targets across Skyrim and beyond. The Dragonborn's initial actions as leader marked a clear return to traditional Brotherhood values. Where the previous leader had taken a more secular, business-like approach to contracts, the new leadership restored the central role of the Night Mother and divine will in all operations. The Night Mother's body was placed in a specially prepared chamber at the sanctuary's core, physically and spiritually placing her at the center of the Brotherhood's activities. This mirrored the design of past sanctuaries and reflected broader organizational changes. Under the Dragonborn's direction, the Brotherhood resumed the practice of receiving contracts through the Black Sacrament. Rather than relying on a network of informants, the Night Mother once again communicated directly with the listener, reconnecting the group to its religious foundations. Assassinations became offerings to the divine rather than simple paid services. The revival of the Five Tenets was another key step back to tradition. These guiding principles, previously discarded for being too restrictive, were reintroduced as essential to Brotherhood discipline. New recruits were required to swear formal oaths to uphold them, with clear consequences both within the organization and spiritually for any breach. Recruitment methods also shifted back to traditional practices. Instead of an opportunistic selection process, the Dragonborn implemented a more careful system that evaluated both combat ability and alignment with Brotherhood beliefs. Though this slowed initial growth, it ensured that new members were fully committed to both the practical and spiritual mission of the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood's first major undertaking under this new leadership was the assassination of Emperor Titus Mede II. This mission required intricate planning, multiple preliminary kills, and successful infiltration of the Emperor's ship tasks that would have overwhelmed most lone assassins. Completing this contract effectively announced the Brotherhood's return to prominence across Tamriel more powerfully than any public statement could have. The political fallout from the Emperor's death went far beyond the immediate crisis over succession. With no heir named, the Elder Council temporarily took control of the Empire, but struggled to unify in the face of internal separatist movements and external pressure from the Aldmeri Dominion. Military leaders in the provinces gained more independence, especially in Skyrim, where the Civil War further weakened imperial control, regardless of which side won. This fragmentation aligned perfectly with Aldmeri's strategic goals. Intercepted Thalmor documents from 4E202 showed they viewed the Emperor's death as a fortunate event that sped up the Empire's decline. The documents also outlined plans to use the resulting chaos to push for more concessions beyond those agreed upon in the White Gold Concordat, particularly in suppressing the worship of Talos. The Brotherhood was revived during a time of intense political turmoil across Tamriel. The civil war in Skyrim had already stretched the Empire's resources thin, even before the Emperor was assassinated. Meanwhile, Morrowind remained focused on internal matters following the Red Year. Hammerfell's ongoing resistance to the Aldmeri Dominion, though commendable, made forming a united stance against the Thalmor even more difficult. Amid this fractured environment, the Brotherhood, under the leadership of the Dragonborn, established a distinct role. No longer simply a tool for anyone with enough gold, the reformed Brotherhood began choosing its targets more carefully, selecting contracts that supported specific geopolitical goals. This marked a major shift from the group's traditional neutrality. The Dawnstar Sanctuary's redevelopment mirrored this shift. Unlike the disorganized expansion of the old Falkreath facility, the Dawnstar base was systematically renovated under the Dragonborn's direction. It included training areas focused on combat tactics, effective against Thalmor and Imperial forces, an expanded alchemy lab for developing poisons tailored to Altmer physiology, and a growing library on Dominion politics and leadership suggesting assassinations aimed at broader strategic outcomes, not just contracted hits. This more deliberate and politically engaged approach reflected the Dragonborn's broader involvement in Skyrim's affairs, regardless of support for the Empire or the Stormcloaks. Their leadership transformed the Brotherhood from a hired killers guild into a covert political force. The Brotherhood's role in post-Civil War Skyrim varied depending on which faction held power. If the Empire won, they likely focused on eliminating Thalmor agents and collaborators to challenge Aldmeri influence. Under Stormcloak control, they would more likely target Imperial loyalists while still opposing Thalmor interests. In either case, the Brotherhood's operations extended well beyond Skyrim. By 4E23, Imperial intelligence reported suspicious deaths of Thalmor diplomats in Valenwood, Cyrodiil, and even the Somerset Isles. Though the killings were made to look unrelated, the pattern suggested coordinated strikes aimed at weakening Dominion intelligence efforts. The financial windfall from high-profile assassinations, including the Emperor's, helped fund better equipment and sanctuary improvements. Additional contracts from various political groups ensured a level of funding the Brotherhood hadn't seen in decades. This financial strength allowed them to rebuild their presence beyond Skyrim. By 4E205, the Brotherhood had re-established operations in at least 3 Imperial provinces. Cyrodiil saw the first new cell, based near Bruma, and positioned to access both the Imperial City and the Jural mountain passes. High Rock followed, with agents setting up operations in Wayresta, historically important site for the organization. Unexpectedly, reports have confirmed that Brotherhood activity has been detected in Saltheim, a remote and sparsely populated island. This suggests a strategic move, possibly to establish a foothold near Morrowind. This expansion coincided with a shift in how the Brotherhood operated. Under new leadership, the group began using more advanced methods beyond simple target elimination. Contracts now often included specific conditions, such as public killings meant to deliver political messages, staged deaths to frame particular factions, or assassinations timed to disrupt key events or negotiations. This marked a shift in the Brotherhood's role, viewing assassination as a form of political expression rather than just a service. Their renewed presence drew attention from Imperial forces, especially the Penitus Oculus. The death of Commander Morrow during the Emperor's assassination temporarily hindered their operations. However, by 4E204, new leadership was assigned to address the growing threat. This renewed campaign faced difficulties beyond the Brotherhood's enhanced defenses. The chaos following the Emperor's death stretched Imperial resources thin, making the hunt for assassins a lower priority than maintaining order. More troubling, some members of the Elder Council reportedly began using the Brotherhood to eliminate political rivals, granting the group protection from within the same government meant to destroy them. As a result, many planned operations were compromised or redirected. The Brotherhood's future influence depends heavily on how leadership balanced tradition with strategic change. A return to old methods would maintain their spiritual foundation, but limit their influence on broader politics. Alternatively, if they continue to innovate while preserving core beliefs, they could become a powerful force in the ongoing struggle between Imperial factions and the Almuri Dominion. In this case, their targets would increasingly reflect strategic aims, such as weakening Dominion control or supporting resistance. A blended approach seems most likely, keeping their foundational role as servants of a higher power while being more selective and strategic in choosing contracts. This would allow them to retain their identity while increasing their impact on the future of Tamriel. As the Fourth Era progresses and direct leadership influence fades, the Brotherhood seems prepared for long-term survival, unlike the post-war decline of earlier years. Traditional practices offer spiritual strength, while modern strategies give them an edge against both Dominion and Imperial opposition. Their decentralized structure, with semi-independent cells across multiple regions, adds resilience and makes them harder to eliminate. The Brotherhood's revival is not just survival, but evolution blending ancient customs with new tactics, perfectly suited to Tamriel's unstable political environment. Whether in the midst of civil war, the halls of government, or border tensions with the Dominion, the Brotherhood once again holds a dominant role in the world of assassination. Their resolve is strong, their purpose clear, and their link to the void remains unbroken. In hushed voices between clients and assassins, the familiar invocation is heard once more. Sweet mother, send your child unto me. And the Night Mother listens, ready to claim more souls.